As a career coach and a committee member of Women in Mining South Africa, I have the privilege of meeting really interesting people on a daily basis. My name's Bryony Lieber, and in this conversation I'm chatting with Mbali Milanzi, the managing director and co-founder of the Tsepa Basadi Group. We talk about navigating her transition from being an employee to starting her own business and becoming an employer. We explore a little bit about being brave, being vulnerable, self-care and burnout, and as usual, I ask my favorite questions. What advice would you give to your younger self? And equally, what advice would your future self give to you? And Mbali, welcome. It's lovely to have you here to chat with me today.
Thank you, Bryony, for having me. And I'm co-founder and one of the directors of Tsepa Basadi. Um, I'm director of everything that is required to be done in the business. Yeah, those are one of the joys of running your own business.
Yes, director of everything. I like that. We're going to explore that in just a minute, but I want to start out with also introducing you as a sponsor of a Women in Mining South Africa mentoring program. Perhaps we can start our conversation there because you and your company came on board this year to sponsor the program. We have a couple of your employees on the program, and I know that you value mentoring and the opportunity for people to network and to grow through the program. And I wanted to explore a little bit about mentoring in your organization, in your life, and what it is about mentoring that's so valuable to you.
Sure. I mean, Bryony, mentorship is invaluable. Um, I cannot pinpoint a point in my life where I didn't propel my career forward or, you know, get an opportunity to do something different or to move forward in my life without mentorship, to get guidance to solve problems, um, to have a sounding board. Um, and I think that's been one of the pillars of Tepa Basari. Um, we have a mentor who's been in our lives since the inception of my career, and we always look up to that particular person as probably one of the people who's played a very intricate role in the formation of Tepa Basadi. And had it not been for that person's involvement and continuous mentorship and guidance, um, I certainly know I wouldn't have the type of career that I have. And I think my business partner would also say the same thing. So we are very pro mentorship. Um, we actually trying to get the ladies within our teams to start mentoring each other. So one of the mentees who's actually on the program is mentoring one of the new ladies in our team. We had a project coordinator at one of our sites, and she was still trying to find her feet. And luckily, one of the project managers and mentees in the program, Valencia, had worked at that site. And we called her up and said, Valencia, we think you'd be ideal to mentor Diponso because she has just started in her new role as a project coordinator and project manager in a mine where you had done extremely well. And it was beautiful. We had a session with them. Dibonso was so keen to take up the mentee role, and Valencia was extremely excited to mentor her. And I think the WIMSA mentorship program has played a huge role in that because it's taught her that not only can she be a mentee, but she learns best through teaching others and by being a mentor. And I think that's why it's adding value in that sense. But I also see it for the ladies who are currently on the program that it's helped them to really take ownership of their careers. Um, you have this phrase, be the CEO of your career. And I'm really seeing that really starting to take shape in the mentees. I'm seeing them being advocates of change, being the difference that they want to see, speaking out, participating, very pro participation in the business. If we have anything, I mean, we were hosting a team building session. And Valencia was one of the people to raise her hand and say, how can I help you guys? Whatever you need me to do. And even during the day of the team building session, the ladies were very keen to assist and to help. And I think it comes from that showing up, shining, doing something, be a part of it. Don't be a bystander. Take your seat at the table. And I'm really seeing that in the ladies, and I'm very proud of the work that the mentorship program is doing. So creating a well-rounded individual, that's what we want in our organization.
Absolutely, and I think that's what we want in all of our organizations and in our country. And what I really love to hear is that mentees are learning that they are mentees, but they can also be mentors. And that was the whole objective behind the group format of this program, is that nobody comes into the program expecting just to absorb. They actually come in to give as well. And to hear that Valencia is taking her mentoring skills into your organization and learning that she learns best by teaching is beautiful feedback to get. So thank you for sharing that. You know, you'd said just now that you've met some of your new employees through the mentoring program as well. And what that says to me is the power of networking, the power of how when people show up in the online sessions that we have, they get noticed. And when they're courageous and they reach out to other people who've been guests on the sessions, they get the opportunity to have valuable conversations that tend to lead to opportunities.
Yeah. I mean, we during that session when I was a panelist, one of the ladies, you know, was brave enough to mention that she felt like her career was just stagnating and she needed change. She needed to do something different in order to get out of, this rut that she was in. And it really touched me. It touched me, and I reached out to her and I said, "Give me a call." And we spoke. I had previously known her from the same organization. However, people have changed, and it was lovely reconnecting with her. And I saw potential, and we needed her skill set in our business. And these platforms are there for people to, like you said, create those networks, do the follow ups, reach out, be brave. And when you do that, you'll certainly start to see it paying off. And it hasn't been on one occasion. The sample set is growing. It's been on two occasions where people reached out, and eventually we gave them an opportunity in our business. And it was through a recruitment process. They interviewed, and we found them to be suitable for the kind of skill set that we require. Look, the work that you're doing, Bryony, is amazing, and it's giving people a platform to really showcase what they're capable of, to meet people that they can collaborate with in the future, or future employers. And I think that's the intangible stuff, but that's the most important part about it, I think.
Well, yeah, and I think that's the objective of Women in Mining South Africa, is to create a platform for people to network, for people to be mentored, and for people to meet others in the industry, and to hear that that platform is enabling that and that people are acting on that platform is kind of the return on investment that we want to hear in terms of the efforts that we put in. And I really want to thank you for raising that. It also speaks very much to the concept of managing your career like a business. You can have all the platforms in the world, but if you don't intentionally act on them, if you don't intentionally show up, if you don't intentionally speak up as your own kind of brand and marketing manager, it doesn't matter what platforms are there. It's about you as the individual taking the opportunities and running with those opportunities. And it's perhaps something that we can explore in terms of your career, because I mean, you transitioned, what was it, 7 years ago, from being an employee to starting your own business. I was wondering if you could maybe share some of the lessons that you've learned in that transition and some of the things that you've leveraged to build your business.
I was very fortunate to have been a project manager, because a lot of the skills that we learn as a project manager are so crucial in running your own business. Networking is a critical component of it. You constantly need to engage stakeholders. Sometimes you don't know them, you're meeting them off the bat. You learn to be in uncomfortable, awkward situations, to ask for help.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, you require that in business. You find yourself in very uncomfortable positions with people you've never met, where you need to engage and sell an idea. And a lot of project management is about selling an idea, understanding an organization's vision, mission, strategy, and putting that into action or implementation. And I think the biggest transition for me, or what was really different, was the fact that I now had to set the strategy and the vision for my business, as opposed to having someone else's vision and mission and strategy that I had to implement. And I think having coaching has also been, quite pivotal, because you have people in industry and mentorship. You have people in industry who have been there, and they can help you to start setting some of those things up, because very often you don't know where to start. You've got an idea. If you're lucky, you've got a client, and it's where to from here. It's how do I get more clients? It's how do I get my clients to pay me on time? It's how do I manage my cash flow? Um, and those are the things that we've been learning. I think right now, the biggest thing has been compliance. Our business has grown immensely over the past 5 years. We started off with one client just as an EME, and we currently sit as a generic organization with almost 70 employees at the moment, with consultants that we partner with, and about 8 clients. And compliance is extremely crucial. Compliance in terms of our, Department of Labor requirements, compliance in terms of SARS, and tax compliance, even just maintaining your triple BEE scorecard, compliance in terms of the DTL. And all of those things we learn as we go along. Um, you have to continuously be empowering yourself with the knowledge to be able to manage some of those things that we actually didn't learn when we were still in corporates,
Yeah.
because you were a technical person, um, and you didn't get exposure to some of the compliance requirements that an organization requires to keep running.
Well, and many of the other requirements that you're having to now deal with as a business owner, and as you said earlier, being the director of everything. And it makes me want to ask you, how would your career in corporate perhaps have been different, or how would you have shown up differently if you had had the mindset of being director of everything, as a technical person? So
Yeah.
not just defining yourself as a technical operator, but as a director of every aspect of your career.
I would have been way more inquisitive.
Okay.
Um, I've always been one to, like I said, by virtue of the career, you always have to engage people. But I always had a specific outcome in mind. And I didn't take enough time to actually engage people around what it is that they do and how it is that or how what they do adds value and impacts the business. And I think had I taken that time to really understand some of the nuances of running an HR department, or some of the nuances of running environmental and compliance type of department, I would have been way more empowered right now, even in my role. Um, but certainly, I think it would have probably given me an edge in the business where I was, because I would have been more well-rounded and probably on track to be CEO. Because you cannot manage a business and be the director of everything without truly understanding how each and every moving part of the business um, plays a role, and how each of them work together to help you to meet the end goal, or to deliver to your clients.
Yeah, so I mean, what you're saying is that in your career, understanding the impact that you have on others and the impact that they have on you and on the bigger business would have been something that would have given you a much kind of more holistic perspective of the business and your part within the business. And I think that's often something that we fail to appreciate when we are working in our careers is is that bigger picture, and is the opportunity to build business acumen and understand all the workings of an organization and how we interface with them. And it's certainly in my kind of journey from being an employee to running my own business, it's been the same thing. I'd Had I had the vision that one day I was going to start my own business, I think there are a lot more questions I would have asked as
Yeah.
an employee that would have set me up with hooks to understand what I was going to need to do. And
Yeah.
for me, that's perhaps the biggest lesson for everybody that's watching this video is to take a long-term view of where you might want to be in 5, 10 years' time, and think about what do you need to know now, what do you need to ask now, what do you need to be more curious about now, what relationships do you need to be building now to set you up for where you want to be in 5 or 10 years. Even if you don't ever get there,
Yeah.
there's no harm in taking the time and spending time on the journey, as opposed to being more transactional, which is I think what we tend to do when we're focusing in the now. If the one piece of advice perhaps for your younger self would have been to take a longer term view and be curious now about what I need to know for the future,
Mm.
what would some other pieces of advice be for your younger self in your career?
I think it would be more curious, ask more questions, don't be too caught up in the rat race, the next position, the next, make the most of where you are and learn as much as you can where you are.
So be more present in the position that you're in as opposed to constantly looking for the next thing. And there's kind of a
Yes.
duality in that because you need to think about where you want to go next so that you can prepare for that now, but at the same time, optimize on where you are now so that you can extract as much as you possibly can in terms of learning from where you are now, but also invest as much as you can in terms of showing up where you are now.
Certainly. I think for me, what I've come to learn is that I learn best from people, better than I would from a book or, or a lecture. I learn best from stories and listening to people. I can tell you so much from a conversation that I've had with Bryony or a conversation that I've had with so and so, and what I learned from it. And I think that realization has really opened my eyes to the fact that had I what I would have done in the past, or what I would have done better in the past, was to actually spend more time listening to people. And it also plays into what you said around, what I would have done differently if I was the CEO of my career when I was, in corporate, because I would have spent more time with those people, trying to understand the value that they think they bring to the organization, and how what they do interlinks with what I do, and how we make the organization better. Um, but honestly, having authentic conversations with people and not trying to reach a final outcome, which is I just want to get my project done, and that's it.
Cast your mind forward 20 years to future Mbali. Imagine mid 50s Mbali having a conversation with you now. What do you think her advice for you would be as you stand today in your business, in the way that you're showing up, in the way that you are doing things?
I think she would say to me, "You you are phenomenal.
Oh, I
Um,
like that.
you know, um, you're doing a great job. Um, don't be so hard on yourself. You're growing. There's time. Be more present. Look after yourself. Leave room for making mistakes. And when you make mistakes, it's not the end of the world. It's all part of the journey. Focus on having a growth mindset." And now I think she would say, remember what's most important. Remember why you're doing what you're doing. Remember that the end goal is to be with your family and your children and your loved ones, at the end of all of this, and still having a sound mind and feeling content. I think what she would say regarding, in the business, how I show up, is that remember that I don't know how to say this actually.
Close your mind, close your eyes, and imagine her.
Yeah. She would say that you're confident, you have a presence, and remember that when you show up. Remember that people listen to you. People gravitate towards you and your ideas. Um, and that what you have to share and what you have to say matters. Um, don't doubt yourself. Um, yeah, and make the most of every opportunity.
She sounds very wise in Bali. I'd like to add that maybe she would also say you have a lot to offer and you should say more publicly more often.
Maybe she would, right?
Mm.
I agree with you, Bryony.
Mm.
I agree with you. It's going to take a bit of practice. I'm open to that journey. I certainly am. But it requires being brave.
It does. It does. So let's maybe follow up on that. Where have you been brave in your career?
Oh, wow. I think I've I've been brave in in a lot of instances. In corporate, certainly. I remember there was a project that was being done where the unions were going to be involved, and it literally involved the entire organization. And I remember going to the VP and putting my hand up for that project. And I said, I want to be part of this project. I want to run this project. I remember just being so, having so much conviction and being sure of myself and knowing what I want in that moment and not being afraid to advocate for myself and to ask for a seat at the table. I knew how important that project was for the organization, and I wanted in, and I knew I deserved to be there. Part of that has also played out in my business journey where I'm constantly having to put my hand up and say, but I can do that. Give me a shot. Why not me? And I'm constantly finding myself in positions where I have to be brave, braving vulnerability, reaching out to people you've never met. You don't know how they're going to respond to you. Being brave enough to be rejected and having the emotional intelligence to to understand that it's not you. Maybe the timing's not great. And very often I find it's that people are not generally just wanting to reject you or ignore you. Everybody's got a lot going on. And I think you grow, you certainly develop a very thick skin, but it's all part of the process.
Yeah, I really want to pick up on that statement that you made. It's not about you, because I think we spend an awful lot of our time in our lives thinking that was about me. Everything is about me. It's my fault. I wasn't good enough. I wasn't enough. I got it wrong. I failed. And therefore, the rejection is all about me. But the point that you make so clearly is everybody's got a lot going on. 99% of the time, it's not about you at all. They're thinking about their own stuff and they're having to weigh up different things. And the fact that they didn't choose you has got nothing to do with you. They just chose somebody else or somebody else's business because it met their needs. And that's not rejection. That's just making a responsible choice.
Yeah. No, certainly. And the trick is to keep trying. Just because one door is shut, it doesn't mean that that very same door won't open. And it doesn't mean that there aren't other doors that will open for you.
And better
So,
doors.
and
Sometimes
better
better
doors.
doors.
Exactly. So I mean, I'm one that constantly hits my head against the wall. And I think I can be extremely annoying, but I'm persistent. And the
Yeah, I was going to say,
persistence,
let's turn that around. Rather than annoying, let's say persistent.
I'm persistent. I'm extremely persistent, but it's required. You don't get anywhere without the persistence.
Well, absolutely. And it's, in a very noisy world where everybody's shouting and everybody's clamoring for attention, if you don't persist, somebody else will take the place that you should be taking.
Exactly.
Let's explore self-care and burnout. It's something that so often, and I think it's an issue that a lot of women struggle with, is
Mm,
putting themselves first, caring for themselves, filling their own cup first, taking time out to just be, let alone to just breathe,
mm,
having boundaries, staying away from people pleasing, staying away from trying to be everything to everybody. And all of
yeah.
those things ultimately can lead to burnout if you aren't self aware. And I'm wondering how self-care is something that you are able to honor, what your journey with self-care has been like, and what your advice to other young women in the mining industry would be around the importance of self-care.
Bryony, I couldn't have said it better myself. Women, I think we generally struggle. We've got a lot on our plate, but a lot of the times, some of it is self-inflicted, because we don't seek help, we don't speak up, um, we we accept that it's all my burden. I have to shoulder everything. And one thing that I'm really learning is to reach out for help, to say, I cannot do everything. Um, and knowing my limitations has helped me so much, because now I can think outside the box around what can I do? If resources were unlimited, how would my life be different? And what can I do to change my current situation so that I can look after myself? And I think those are the questions that we constantly need to ask ourselves, but also reach out to others to seek help around how do we how do I make more time for me? Um, I'm juggling being a mother, I'm juggling being a wife, being a businesswoman. And I think it's for me it's a journey that I think um, I'm constantly working on. What self-care looks like to me is having time for myself every day, every day to re-energize, to center myself. Self-care is also about, you know, health and wellness, and spending time reading a book that enhances you, um, but also helps you to just block out everything around you and just focus on you. It's about exercise. It's about spirituality. It's about whatever is important to you that gives you energy. Sometimes it's even about spending time with other people. Um, Being in a situation where you're networking or you're spending time with friends and family. That for me is self-care, and I'm having to be very intentional about blocking time out for those specific things, prioritizing those things. Look, I'm not doing well on those KPIs, but but I'm getting there. It's like I said, it's a journey. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon.
Absolutely. And I think self-care is what helps us run the marathon and finish the marathon. I think when we treat life and we treat work as a sprint, we're going to deplete ourselves very, very quickly. But what I really liked about what you said is knowing your limitations and being able to ask for help. And it's almost as if when you are very clear on your limitations, you can somehow strip away your limitations completely, because you are able to bring more capacity to you by asking for help, by intentionally kind of securing time for what you need, time, securing resources for what you need. And I think there's some irony in that, because we're talking about limiting yourself when you don't know your own limitations, and when you do know your own limitations, suddenly how that actually frees you up.
It does. It really, really does. Because if you feel you can do everything, then you won't ask for help. But when you really sit back and you say, I can't, I really need someone else to take on this and that. And I think I've learned that from you, Bryony. So thank you.
Well, thank you for reminding me, because I think I'm learning it back from you as well. And I also want to rephrase that, because when we think I can't do everything versus I don't need to do everything,
Exactly.
it's a very different emphasis. And Mbali, we've covered all sorts of things in this conversation. And I'm wondering if there's a particular theme that's come out for you that you just want to emphasize as some closing words.
I think what's been key here for me is you need to, in your career, you need to be inquisitive, you need to be curious, you need to be brave.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, taking on whatever opportunity is given to you, and also advocating for yourself and asking for opportunities that you feel you are worthy of, knowing your self-worth. And a big part of that is self-care and asking for help where you feel that you need help. And also making use of platforms such as WIMSA, the mentorship program, networking, building those networks, because that's how we get opportunities. That's how we grow. We grow and we learn from others. And I think the, the biggest takeaway for me here is just being brave, brave vulnerability.
Thank you. I'm so glad you've emphasized being brave and the relationship of brave and vulnerability. I think so many people think that vulnerability is weak, but I actually, as do most people, understand that vulnerability requires incredible courage. It requires really making yourself seen at the most kind of raw, stripped down level, and accepting that when we're vulnerable, we don't know everything. We're not always getting it right, but
Yeah.
that it puts us into the position of being back as a learner, I guess, and being willing to get out of our comfort zone and willing to step into possibly getting it wrong, but in the
Yeah.
process also learning and growing. And I don't think we can grow without vulnerability, and we can't be vulnerable without courage.
Beautiful. Well said.
And Barley, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed chatting with you, and I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for the support that you and Tabile give to us as Women in Mining South Africa. And looking forward to another conversation in the future and getting some more of your pearls of wisdom.
Thank you so much, Brian. Thank you for the opportunity and for always stretching me. Yeah, it's I really do appreciate it, and I'm learning so much from you and the ladies at Windsor. Thank you.